Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Jay Roach's new drama, Bombshell. Based on the real-life scandal, the film follows the group of women at Fox News who exposed the toxic atmosphere of harassment at the network and took down CEO Roger Ailes. In addition to Bombshell, Mr. Roach's credits include the feature films Trumbo, Dinner for Schmucks, Meet the Parents, Mystery Alaska, and 3 Austin Powers films, the pilot for the television series The Brink, the DGA Award-nominated movie for television All the Way, and the DGA Award-winning movies for television Game Change and Recount. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in New York, Mr. Roach spoke with director Leslye Headland about filming Bombshell. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
That was pretty good, right? Right? I loved it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Get it. Yes. No, congratulations. Just such a great, incredibly affecting, funny at times, entertaining weirdly. Also, a lot of PTSD came up for me watching the film, having worked for a man almost exactly like Ailes in many, many ways. But my name is Leslye Headland. I'm a writer and director. I made 2 movies, Bachelorette, Sleeping with Other People. I'm also the co-creator of Russian Doll on Netflix. And I used to work for Harvey Weinstein, which is kind of my claim to fame, honestly, at this point. And so, yeah, I could really what I love about the film, and I'd love you to talk about it a little bit in terms of the pre-production, the prep. How did you create that toxic atmosphere? Because the movie really drops you into it and doesn't help you into it, which is something that I think really, is so affecting and right on. Like that type of work environment with that, it all trickles down from that sociopath at the top.
That was my pitch. Literally what I went into Annapurna at the time, and actually when Charlize sent me the script, just as a friend to give her notes, we'd worked on a TV thing or something, and so I just wrote, but the whole pitch to her and to Annapurna was, I see this as Roger Ailes' weird culty playhouse.
It's a cult.
It's a
totally
cult, and that he was sort of projecting onto. And it was good marketing from his point of view. He saw it as a way to sell news, as we describe, but it became much more as he got addicted to the power of it and the ability to both cast people who fit into the cult, but then even if they deviated slightly, to kind of force them into the mold, and have them reflect back to him what he thought of as what a loyal soldier. That's why that song at the end is called One Little Soldier, is he looked at it as his loyal soldiers who owed him a debt because he was helping them, which he really did help them. A lot of women talked about how much, even Megyn Kelly, who, worked for him for 10 years after he harassed her, and he kept promoting her, and so it was a very complicated situation. But that's the whole point of it to me, was what it might be like trying to figure out how to fit into this guy's playhouse, and how he would not only make you conform to it, but then also pit you against every other person in the scheme of it all. And that would be both toxic from a standpoint of, just bullying and everything else, but it was also, just women were put in these situations where they were pressed for his loyalty, and you would show loyalty to him. It meant sexual favors.
Yeah. There's something that really rang so true about the commodification of the female body in order to sell your product, and how women, I think, in any occupation at some point kind of run into, why are you wearing your hair that way? So on and so forth. This is just to the nth degree of, we can't do our job if you don't show your legs, which I thought, call me an idiot, but it just had not occurred to me. Like, you put it in a frame where I finally understood, because, there's always the joke about, it's just a bunch of, blonde women on Fox and so on and so forth. Like I kind of thought, well, it's probably, it's run by a bunch of like, misogynist assholes. But actually it is very smart. It's actually very smart if you want to have news on 24 hours a day, what's the thing that's going to get you? And the idea that you are serving a purpose and that you start to desensitize yourself as an employee for a person like that you do start kind of thinking from the neck up and you just don't kind of live in your body, and of course that's so much of what PTSD, when I was watching the film, felt so much PTSD of just like, it's being stored in certain places that when you went through it, you just kind of went, I'm a soldier. I mean, it's very, very similar, that idea that, when I see my friends now from Miramax, it is like seeing somebody from Vietnam. Like, you're just like, how you doing? Like, you okay?
Wow.
That being said, I was
We should just talk about that for this.
Sorry.
I'm not sure.
No, but that being said about Fox being assholes, I was so interested in how much of Fox you were using, like the licensing and the logos and all these kinds of things, exposing the inner workings of how, not just the way that women were being exploited, but the way that power was being consolidated. Like, how were you able to do that and not get in trouble?
I want to get into that before, but I wanted to say that off of the whole thing of how you use, how men are used to using women to sell things. I'm quite aware that I'm part of a business that does a lot of that too.
Oh, same.
Yeah. It's not like, and it's not also not like it's not part of a lot of other news and weather ladies and all, but there was something unique to the way Roger Ailes marshaled it all in a very organized way and a very a savvy way, frankly, like you said. But it did have this collateral damage, and a lot of women suffered. In terms of how we figured out how to use all the real Fox world and make it seem authentic, we just were determined to get it right. We did a ton of research. My production designer had an actual mole inside of Fox who had been there a long time, who slipped us a lot of photos and things. But one of the things, that's interesting for me, and I've developed this over time, making Recount and Game Change, and even in Trumbo and all the way the LBJ thing, where we blend in a lot of archival footage. In Game Change, we actually intercut Julianne Moore playing Sarah Palin with Katie Couric, and actually use real Katie Couric. And in a lot of cases, you can't get permission to do that, but there is the fair use kind of clause of intellectual property that allows you to, if it's for a film that has a public benefit, a social benefit, you're allowed to use small amounts of footage without permission, and you just claim fair use, and you can do it. But there's one important catch to it, is that you have to try to be as authentic as you possibly can be, to not change the meaning of how it was used originally. Right. So for us, it always means match everything. Use all the actual logos, all the, like in all the cases where we put both Charlize Theron as Megyn Kelly confronting Donald Trump, for example, in the primary debate, when she says, these are all the horrible things you said about women. We're intercutting her with Donald Trump, but she's wearing the same outfits. I matched the shots. And same thing with Julianne Moore. I put her, Julianne was, both of them actually, Julianne and Charlize were so into matching even body language. And so if you can show that you're trying desperately to be authentic, you're telling an expressive story. You're not, as we say, it's a painting, not a photograph. But it is, you do try to be authentic. You can't be accurate, because you can never squeeze a year-long story, which is what ours was, into 2 hours and not deviate and take license and have composite characters. But you can try to be just as deeply authentic as you can through research, we interviewed a ton of the actual women who worked there at the time, who'd been through things like this. And we had every single prop person, production designer, wardrobe people. We had, Colleen Atwood, the amazing Academy Award-winning costume designer, who did all our, and we had Kazuhiro, who did all the prosthetics, this incredible prosthetic work. So there's an interesting balance between interpreting and expressing and authenticity that enabled us to actually get to get as close as we could to some sense of being there.
I think you use it so slyly. Like it's really, really well done. And it's, obviously something we've seen before, in kind of, I would just say like a flashier way, meaning, Oliver Stone with JFK and, Robert Zemeckis with Forrest Gump.
With
like
Ali,
Michael,
all those things.
Yeah, it's like it's a technique that's used, but in a weird way, it kind of becomes the movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like when Megyn Kelly in your film says like, "Am I the story?" It's like what I loved about how it was utilized here was she looked so much like Megyn Kelly. I mean, I was just like, tell me, the first time you saw her come out, did you just like pass away and come back to life? Like
it really was shocking even when we did the makeup tests when she first walked out. Everyone, and what's we're sort of ready for it. The audiences that we screen a lot, in post. Yeah. I guess because I come out of comedy, I really like screening it over and over, and all through post-production. We screened it almost every week for at least 50, 100 people. Sometimes for previews, it's 500 people, and we're doing it to just see what's clicking and where might I be losing the audience? We're never slavish to it, but we always just pay attention to it, and it's mostly our way to restructure and try a new way in, and we needed that in this one because it didn't used to start as well as it does now or end quite as well, and over the course of screenings. But one of the things we noticed was that at the beginning of the movie, people thought that was real Megyn, that we were starting with archival footage, and they didn't. It takes them a while. I see all you nodding your heads.
Oh, man.
Because it takes
wild.
a while, and you actually hear the audience start to go, "Oh my God, is that Charlize Theron?" Like it seems so. It's almost like there's what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance, where your perception is not matching what you were told was going on, and that I think the audience, like you said, I think there is another that becomes the story, because when you come to see a movie that's derived from real life things, that's part of the deal, is the high wire act of, are they going to be able to sustain, keep my willing suspension of disbelief,
which I think you did
going.
Beautifully. Like I think the film, I think it walks that wire so beautifully, and I think part of the thing that helps that is the Margot character, who feels a little bit more like a composite, a little less of a, I see, that's Gretchen Carlson, that's Megyn Kelly, like there's something about Margot's performance and the way, can you talk a little bit about how you and Charles developed that character? Because I believe, is she a real person?
She's a fictitious character that is derived from a number of stories we heard, and some of her background, her evangelical upbringing is a little bit from Charles's own life. He and I both were actually raised.
Same.
I know. I read that about you. You
Whoa.
were raised in a Christian.
Wow,
I was raised
here we
in
are.
a pretty strong Christian background, Southern Baptist. So was Charles. Very conservative families. My family are still quite devoted Fox News followers.
God, same.
So I watch Fox all the time with them and try to figure it out, because when I was a teenager, I started to deviate away from my dad's perception of the world a little bit, and have found an interesting tension. But I'm also, it's been good for me because, especially in these films, I'm not trying to make a partisan statement. I'm actually very often trying to make these films for my family, who I want to, I don't know, just connect with them a little bit on some level.
Man, no pun intended. But,
my mom, well, and it's interesting, right? It's just an interesting tension, and it's an identity crisis all the time too. And my mom especially, but a lot of the women in my family who are conservative, my mom was such an amazing person and taught me to read when I was 4. She was like, by the time she was 25, she had 4 kids. She didn't get to go to college. She was brilliant in high school, and just was one of those women who just, I don't know, was maybe just wasn't going to get to realize what she might have become. I don't know, but what she was for me was my hero. My mom was my hero, and she was such a huge influence on me. So I thank her in the end of the credits, because she inspires me all the time, and I wanted to make a movie that might inspire women who maybe don't identify with the feminists like Megyn Kelly says. She doesn't see herself as a feminist, but might want to watch the film because there are women she recognizes. She watched Megyn Kelly. She watched Gretchen Carlson going through something that is not a partisan thing at all. It's something all women have to put up with, and maybe somehow we could cross over and just talk about it as a nonpartisan thing, even though there's obviously there's Donald Trump is in this movie, there's a lot of that too, but That's what, I'm just getting at this in a very all over the place thing, but that's really what it was all about for me.
That's why I love that she was bisexual. Like, I love,
sorry,
you know what I mean? Like,
Margot
that she
thing.
kept,
Yeah, so
she's literally doing this.
So she, no,
like,
and
she
that's
literally
the
has
tension.
to.
And I talked a lot about, sorry, I got off track, but that,
No.
was, that's part of what went on in talking to Margot. She's so just tapped into storytelling. She totally got the character, and she had a lot of questions. And she also had been raised in a Christian family, Margot, and she understood the idea of compartmentalizing different categories of her, different aspects of her life to somehow cope with them. Charles and I both think if she was in a different world, she probably would just be fine being gay, and she didn't, but in here it's like, I'm not gay. I'm just, this is just a thing. We're just having a thing. Like, and
quick anecdote, very similar to my own experience. I remember, like, I was like, my sister was like, "Are you gay?" And I was like, "No, I just sleep with women." And she was like, "That's pretty gay," like, just like a pretty gay thing to do.
And
Please continue.
I love that she says that. Yeah, no, so that's you understand where she's coming from, and that's I like that part about her character. But there were young women, even late in Roger's career, who were being put through these horrible situations. And the other women, Megan and Gretchen, had some amount of power. Gretchen, gave up all her power and took a huge risk. Megan had great lawyers. They both had great lawyers. Margot is not going to have support in this. And she represents the much more common story of women who are just trying to get some slight move up and end up being manipulated that way, and then have to face that they don't necessarily have those kinds of means to cope with it. And watching, I think her character becomes the more relatable sort of, soul at stake, if you will, as the story goes on. And Margot's performance, I mean, that scene when she's being harassed with Roger, the scene where she confesses to Kate McKinnon, and on all the lighter scenes too with Kate. We've often said we should do a spin-off of Margot and Jess, because they have such a great relationship.
Yeah, I want to pitch you a movie. It's like, how good of a broadcast news, remake with Margot as William Hurt and Kate McKinnon as Holly Hunter.
I'm in. Let's start.
I'm just gonna you guys get that for free. But I do want to talk about that scene actually really quickly. I just wanted to commend you because, as a female filmmaker, when you are approaching a sex scene or you're approaching, especially a scene of sexual harassment or sexual assault, for me, in the back of my head is always this idea that, like, I might be creating something that could be sexualized later. And so I want to remind myself of that, even though that's not my intention. Of course, my intention is to tell the story. I just wanted to commend you. I thought that scene was shot so respectfully and so well. I think there is something about the camera very intentionally dehumanizing her and not making this about his arousal by her, but much more about almost casting her the way that she is for him. Because yes, he feels that arousal, but you don't objectify that with the camera. You're so far away. It's so awkward almost in a way. Do you want to talk at all about
We talked a lot about that. Even in post-production, it's definitely, it's so fascinating. You are a director and you clearly are thinking, as I thought, every second of that, because I didn't know how and listen, it's tough. This whole film was tough as a man to figure this out. I was working with so many great women and, not the least of which is our whole cast, but a lot of really great women producers. All our studio execs were super helpful in this. But the tone, my advisors, if you will, in a figurative sense in that scene where all the women I had spoken to or spoken to about other women who'd gone through this, that it was definitely not about sex. It was much more about power, taking her power away and putting, he was so addicted to power that he craved that obeisance. Is that how you pronounce that? Obeisance, or whatever, like obeisance, I think it's like the people who pay tribute to him and give him loyalty. He craved that affirmation. And the way to get it is to strip it away from someone. It's literally an evil choice, to strip away.
It actually is evil,
to actually take something from someone, a little piece of her soul, a little piece of her confidence, and humiliate her to some extent. He would never describe it that way, and she might not even have described it that way, but that's what was going on. And so it was very tough to figure out, to have the audience be in on that and not feel like we were enjoying looking at her, that he was, but that it was not about, he's getting aroused, and I even, there was even how loud should his breathing be? Like how creepy should that be? Yeah. And I wanted it to be creepy. Like it's painful, like it's excruciating creepy, but she's stuck there. She can't, we want to run with her, we want to take off, but she can't. So it was actually just
so smart.
Tough. And I don't ever operate the camera usually. I have such great cinematographers. I came up through camera work out of film school, but I love working with DPs and operators that I don't have to talk too much. They know what they see the scene. They know what I'm going for. Barry Ackroyd, our DP, shoots in a way that I chose him because he shoots this way, but then we pushed it together even further, which is that he always shoots in oppositional angles. Like there's rarely shooting the same side and then turn around.
Yeah.
So no one is ever off camera. This is what I like about it. The actors, there's never a thing where the actors are just kind of holding some back because they're off camera, and then when they get on camera, they finally deliver, because then the other actors never get that up to speed rhythm from the other person. Some give it off camera, and it's like watching a play, and they're sustaining a live performance. They just don't get to ever slow down. But I knew I didn't want to put her through that for a lot of takes. So I said, let's do 3 cameras. We usually do 2. Let's do 3. I'll operate the 3rd camera. And I was shooting that wide shot I thought was important to show the weird change in distance between the two of them in the composition.
Yeah.
And I was in the room, and I'm usually right next to the one of the cameras, but I felt more in the room, and it was so disturbing. I was worried I would blow the shot, because I did have to reframe once in a while. I didn't have to do much, but and it was one of the most I don't know, it was just a devastating experience for all of us in the room, because John Lithgow is one of the nicest human beings.
I was going to say he must either be the nicest person or like a secret bummer.
No,
who knew he was a diva?
The most generous. Before the film, he said, I need all the contact for all the actors and all the actresses in the film, because I need to call them and say, listen, I'm going to do some really horrible stuff in this movie, and I love all of you, and I just know it's coming from wanting to get the character right, but I'm going to come at you in this really dark way. And that's how generous he was. So all of us he got to that place where he was so convincing, even in the room, that it was almost unbearable. But it was just, I heard those stories from those women in my mind. They talked about the spin. People would warn each other about, beware the spin, which is Roger asking you to stand up and turn around, which would sometimes be professional, certain way, just say, are you camera ready? And other times it would be this little one of the steps till you went over your own personal line where you would never cross. And as soon as you just went a little past it, like lift your skirt up just a little higher, then he knew he had you, because then he could get you a little further the next time. And now you were in you had a secret that he could use against you. Yeah. And that's how we got to that.
I really have to commend you guys. There's one last thing about that scene that I thought was so brilliant was that, his coverage is all kind of his eye level, it's all like right with him, so that we kind of get this sense of what he is looking at. But I loved that she was at this kind of almost like omniscient angle, like our angle, basically, like there isn't anybody in that room except for us. And I actually felt a little bit of that complicity there. And I think that one of the things that the film does so well is that everything is so messy, but, obviously intentionally, but it feels so like all the handheld, all this stuff, that when Kate kind of says, I can't talk to you about, she tries to confide in her, and she says, don't tell me. I don't want to know, like this. I think you captured something in those environments that is very cult-like, which is, we aren't going to talk to each other, and we aren't going to support each other, because, I don't want him coming at me. So if he comes at me for this person, I absolutely will be like, I'm glad that that's not happening to me, and you start kind of like trying to avoid essentially either the gaze or the anger or the destruction. Did that inform, and anyway, point being, how with your, what's your DP's name again?
Barry Ackroyd.
What did you guys discuss ahead of time in pre-production? Like, did you feel like coming from that comedy perspective of like, we've got 2 cameras, we're just going to capture, we want everything live all the time, which is so, gets you those kind of Veep kind of funniness and even the Succession kind of funniness, or did you guys kind of find it organically as you were moving through the shoot?
Well, a little of, not so much the comedy thing, because we knew some aspects of it would be, Charles's script had a dark irony, the sense of absurdity, things we hoped people would be okay with, even though it's a very sensitive subject, a very serious subject, because people their life is weird, and we thought you could get, Kate McKinnon could talk about how to do a Fox story, and she could talk about in bed with her, I've been trying to get a job, but I could only get a job at Fox, and then once I got a job at Fox, I couldn't get a job anywhere else because I work at Fox. Those things, those ironies, but it wasn't, we thought there might be tonally, we could get away with some comedy, but the way we shot it, Barry and I talked a lot about it, was not so much to go for comedy, although you can improvise a little easier when you're doing oppositional shooting, but I think most of the scenes, of all the scenes we did, it was probably only Kate McKinnon and Margot Robbie's scenes that were improvised at all.
Oh, interesting.
Because Kate is such a brilliant improviser, Margot's really good at it too. You never know. I like working in drama with comedy capable people because you get that sense of irony sometimes.
I do too, yeah.
But I didn't know if Margot would just go with it, and she was fantastic at it. So in their scenes we did, but most of the time it was Barry. I usually shot list, intensively, storyboard. I have shot lists for plan A, and then I have shot lists for plan B, C, D, and E, which are the ones that are what happens when something goes wrong or you run out of time, you have to speed it up. And in Barry's case, he was like, I don't really want to know what your shot list is, and I won't have marks on the floor. He's a documentarian, and so we rehearsed a couple times, and a lot of times we would shoot the rehearsals, but he would find it. And like that scene in the elevator that was the teaser trailer, there's some amazing camera operating when we're shooting over Margot to Charlize, and just the way she we're on her, you don't know what's going on, then she glances, the focus pulls, all that discovery is Barry hoping he doesn't know about it in advance, but getting there just as a documentarian would, and having you feel like you're even more voyeuristic, you're more that kind of, not quite mind's eye view, but that documentarian's just finding the camera position that you wasn't quite pre-staged, but was when he got it, it was like, oh, thank God the camera got there right at the right time. And that's all just Barry's incredible camera operating. He shot Ken Loach movies, he shot Paul Greengrass movies, he shot The Big Short, he shot Captain Phillips. He's an amazing DP, and he'd worked with Charlize on a couple things, and so we were lucky to get him through her great producing. She's a really fantastic producer too, but that's how that happened. That's how that
that makes so much sense too, because those types of environments, like toxic environments that revolve around predators, like so much of it is energy, which I don't think people understand. Like when people first started approaching me to talk about my experience, it was always like, how do you feel about the way that he treats women? How do you feel about the sexual stuff? And it was like, I have a problem with the way he treats everyone. You know what I mean? Like I have a problem with the energy of this person in the world, who is basically, and so to have a cameraman or a DP rather, but to start your process from an energetic kind of perspective, I think is why it captures that so beautifully. The last question I had for you, and then do we have time for more stuff? No one's cutting me off, so I'm going to keep going. In that scene in the elevator, I really noticed the score of the film. And I noticed that the score utilized female vocals a lot, which I thought was really interesting. It's something that female vocals, at least for me, usually denote a certain amount of like grace, you know, like, or lightness. And the fact that you were using it so ominously, I thought was so interesting. Do you want to talk about how that came about?
That was an interesting thing that developed with my composer, Theodore Shapiro, who I've worked with in a bunch of films. But we talked about it. I knew he was going to do the film very early on, even when it was just at script phase. And he actually started writing that suite. He calls them suites of types of score way before I even shot the movie, just off of what he sensed from the script. But one of the things, we had both been inspired by Petra Hayden. I don't know if you know, one of the Hayden triplets, Charlie Hayden's daughters, who has done whole albums where she recreates movie scores using only her voice as the instrumentation. And also this weird, very cool band called Roomful of Teeth with Caroline Shaw, who's now a Pulitzer Prize composer. I think she's a brilliant classical composer. And then my wife, Susanna Hoffs, is from the Bangles, and she and Petra are really close and used to perform all the time. So Teddy took Petra and Sue and recorded their voices doing all this and the and then the stuff from the beginning, and he just put them on keys and played their voices like instruments.
Oh, wow.
You know, so it was a kind of interesting thing of roboticizing women, as in, you know, like exploiting is the wrong word, but you know, like mechanizing the voices to make them haunting, but yet have their personal flavor of the texture. And then Caroline came in and redid some of that, but then did that whole thing at that end suite when that sort of tribal thing over the credits at the end. And then the amazing Regina Spektor watched the movie with me and was just totally broke down and wrote that original song that plays over the One Little Soldier song. So it was always meant to be women's voices, and because it's a story about women speaking up and voices, you know, adding their voices to the conversation. And that could have been very conceptual and sort of too heavy-handed but Teddy is a master, and he's the one who figured out how to make it kind of haunting, almost Philip Glass haunting, you know, in that section. And it became, you know, that teaser trailer, I just had when we shot the scene, I said, this could be a teaser just by itself. There's no dialogue, you know, but I was kidding kind of. And then the studio actually did it. And that was a really powerful introduction to our film. So got lucky with that.
No, it paved the way, I think, for what the tone of the film is. It's really, really cool.
Any questions?
Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, I'm cool.
Everyone's really excited to ask a question, but I want to make sure we do. We do? Excellent. Sir with the hat.
So they haven't.
The question is, have Gretchen and Megan seen the film?
Thank you. So I think Megan has seen it, but she hasn't commented on it. And I don't think Gretchen has. She still has her NDA. It's one of the interesting things about the timing of this movie. The whole subject of NDAs has become such a thing. And Gretchen, since she, did this incredible thing by suing him, and I was quick to remind people, a year before the Harvey news broke, when women there was certainly, the Me Too movement existed, but there wasn't a wave of women speaking up for each other and supporting each other. Gretchen, sues him and takes this on. And then after she gets the settlement, and we didn't know that when we decided to end the film with the lawyers saying to her, okay, you got the apology, which is amazing. No one ever apologizes. You got the settlement, but you're going to have to stay quiet. You're going to be muzzled. And she says, maybe. That was a late development in our process, but it wasn't related to the fact that we knew this is about 3 months ago we came up with that ending. It didn't used to end that way. But now, because of Ronan's book and the Megan Toohey, Jodie Cantor book, and, came up on Rachel Maddow, that NBC was going to have to let women out of their NDAs. Now Gretchen, who's been lobbying Congress to stop forced NDAs, stop forced arbitration for years, is now the person asking Fox to let her out of her NDA. So I'm hoping she gets let out of her NDA, sees the film, and then talks with us about it. Because that would be amazing, to now we never got to talk to her. She couldn't tell us anything about what she went through. It's one of the reasons that originally her story was a little less fleshed out. We slowly figured out more and more, and I shot a couple more scenes later. But we're really curious to hear what Megan had told her story in a book. She wrote a book that came out the fall after this all happened. And so we had a lot of detail to her story, but we didn't have any access to Gretchen's.
Yes, ma'am.
No. Oh, yes.
The question is... This is my favorite part of the Q&A, guys. This is my favorite part. I get to act. The question is, did Charlize commission the script and or how did the script come about to you?
Charles Randolph and I don't know exactly when he exactly started to do it, but very soon after Roger was fired, went to Annapurna with Margaret Riley as producer manager and set it up as a pitch. Annapurna commissioned it and bought it, and he actually had a bunch of buyers competing for it. Annapurna got it. He worked on it for about a year and some months, gave it to Charlize in the fall of 2017, late fall, and then she gave it to me. She was on the fence about it for a long time, and she gave it to me in February 2018. So we've been working on it. I've been working intensively on it for almost 2 years, but not quite. And they've been working on it for about 3 years. So that's, yeah. And as I say, Charlize just wanted some notes, and she said, those are pretty good notes. Will you direct this? And I said, are you sure? One question was, are you sure you shouldn't get a woman to do it? Because obviously we're going to be behind the whole way, trying to figure out as men what women went through. But I committed right away, partly because I was collaborating with her, to just not, it's going to be collaborative. We're going to all make it together. We're going to have to, hopefully I do think men need to talk to men about this stuff, and I can try to be some sort of an interpreter, but not without women telling me what this was like, Yeah,
but it's a huge thing for a male director like yourself who has such a huge body of work and is so respected to use where you are in your career to tell this story, to choose to tell this story. You know what I mean? Like I think that's really commendable and really important. And you're right. Men do also need to talk about it with each other, because they shouldn't feel like they are separate from that conversation. Like, listen, I welcome hiring more female filmmakers. Yay, give me a job. But I also think part of the healing process is that. So that's my own personal take. Sir, glasses. Do you have glasses? Yeah, you do. Hi. So the very long-winded but excellent question is, I'm going to give you the Fox News version of his question, which was, how was it kind of coming, as someone that's taken a look at very complicated, bad characters, what was it like coming at these people who are real people, who work for Fox News, who are ruining the country, and humanize them and make them, valid characters in your story?
Well, I don't start by looking at them as bad people. Maybe, again, because of my own upbringing, I look at them as people who I don't agree with in so many ways, but I need to understand myself. It's almost a coping strategy. Why would you think this? How did you think Sarah Palin would be a good idea to be vice president of the United States? Someone thought that, and they weren't insane, and it actually turned out to be a good strategy. And, I related with her, just to jump back a couple of films, because I was like, I'm throwing myself into things where I'm way in over my head all the time. Why can't I should look at myself. Why did I feel entitled to direct a movie about, women's, I'm doing this, it's something I do I felt for her. That moment when she's prepping the debate, she has no idea what she's doing. She's supposed to go up against Joe Biden, at the time was one of the great, debaters and senators, and she's supposed to deliver the knockout punch. You would have to knock down a bathroom door and find me naked on the floor, curled up, saying, no, I'm not going out there. Like, I related with that. And I talked to many people on the left and right, but I knew a lot more on the left. So I talked to them about Roger Ailes, who loved Roger Ailes, saw him as a mentor, a surprisingly generous person, incredibly witty person. But I also see his point of view as being very paranoid, it reminds me of a lot of people in my family, very paranoid, very sure that the essence of America is, precious bodily fluids are being, being sapped out of us by the left,
That's
by
a Dr. Strangelove reference for all you nerds out there.
And, that I don't agree with it at all. And it is really toxic. Sometimes to me, it's a kind of worldview that just divides us and pits us against each other. But I think trying to understand it and portray it authentically, and in this case, again, these women were not necessarily, if you were going to say, I'm going to do a Me Too movie, or I'm going to do a movie about, these would not necessarily be the first women you would think of to be the examples of taking on a powerful man and actually bringing him down. But they did this, and they did it a year before, and that's what made it interesting. They were in complicated predicaments. They had, but they're women who are like a lot of women in all sorts of political situations. So I have to go into it just like I asked the actors to go into it, without judgment, but with an intense desire to understand, and then an equally intense desire to ask the audience to empathize and get over that prejudice. Because I think I don't know if you enjoyed the film or not, but if you did, it might be surprising to you that you enjoyed it based on the setting. And that's something, I got you over something some kind of prejudice or predisposition or whatever. And that's more interesting to me than coming at you about something you already agree with and know you're going to like and know you're going to, that seems more, to me, that's more of a challenge. So thank you for encouraging me to keep doing that.
I believe we have to wrap up. Is that correct? Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't cover, Jay, that we should mention?
No.
The release
Thank you for
date,
the
any
great
of those things?
questions.
Okay.
We're coming out here on one more. We should let some women ask questions. Yeah. Good question.
Question was: did the Murdochs push back?
No, but I don't know if they know what's happening yet. I mean, I don't know. I'm waiting for that onslaught. I'm waiting. And I'm also becoming a little more paranoid myself, wondering who's hacking into my internet accounts. What? So I don't.
You probably should. Yeah.
We don't know. I think they're probably. They authorized. They okayed Megyn Kelly's book, which told this story to some extent. They, as a corporate policy, at that time realized they probably had to do this, but they allowed that outside investigation to occur, at Fox, unlike NBC has, for example, recently. And they sort of knew they had to because they were under so much pressure and there were so many women coming forward. By the time the Paul Weiss investigation, the firm Paul Weiss completed, I think a couple dozen women had come forward with very detailed charges. So I think they have actually tried to make a strong effort in this department, at least, to make it safer for women to work at Fox. And I mean, I think they might, whether it's true or not, and I don't know if anybody could, testify about that right now, but it is in their PR for their publicity advantage to let us go. So I wish they would be more controversial. I wish they would come at us, because that might give us a little more. I remember when Trump threatened to sue Michael Wolff. What's that? Yeah. I'll drink the coffee. Yeah, good. That's a very good callback.
That's it. That's all we got. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for the interest. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Tell your friends about it.
Yeah, tweets, spread the word. Are they allowed to tweet?
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more great Q&As with directors James Mangold and Cassie Lemons. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.